My family did not respect my personal space, and because of that, my things were broken, and my career was almost ruined. So, I'm Travis, 26, and for the past few years, I've been living what you might call a very quiet, very average life in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. After graduating college with a degree in web design, I moved back home to save on rent. At the time, it seemed temporary, maybe a year or two max. But 1 year turned into another, and now I've been here for nearly 4. I live with my mom, Carol, my stepdad Dan, and my younger sister Emily, who just turned 18. The house isn't anything fancy, just a 3-bedroom ranch with a small backyard and one of those driveways that always needs patching. But it's home. I rent my old room for $500 a month, pay the full internet and electric bills, and chip in on groceries whenever we're running low. I try to do my part, even though no one ever officially asked me to. The arrangement is fine. I have space to work, especially since I'm freelance, and I don't mind helping out around the house. I like cooking, and I do the dishes more often than not. We all kind of just do our own thing, and for the most part, it works. Except for one little thing, Dan. Dan came into the picture when I was a teenager. He's not a bad guy, just kind of stiff. The kind of man who thinks silence is the best answer to most questions and has never once laughed out loud at a movie. We've never really clicked. He's the kind of guy who says web design isn't a real job. Even though I make enough to pay my bills, cover my share of the house, and even sock away a bit in savings. I've had clients from New York to Seattle, but in Dan's eyes, because I work from a laptop and wear sweatpants half the time, I might as well be unemployed. My mom, on the other hand, is the glue of this household. She works part-time at a dental clinic and handles pretty much everything else. She's one of those people who never sits down, always moving, cleaning, fixing, organizing. She keeps a laminated chore list on the fridge, even though it's really just the 3 of us now that Emily's out of high school. She treats me being here like it's still a temporary thing, even though we've all quietly accepted it's become the new normal. Emily's cool. We used to fight when we were kids, like scream through the door kind of stuff, but now we're kind of like roommates who share occasional snacks. She wants to be a nurse and just started working part-time at a smoothie place downtown. She's more mature than I was at her age, and I'll admit I kind of live vicariously through her excitement about the future. But let me get back to the atmosphere in the house. It's not hostile or anything. We have dinner together once in a while, watch the occasional movie. But there's an underlying tension between me and Dan that never really goes away. It's not like we argue, more like we exist in the same space, politely ignoring each other unless there's a reason to talk. He always calls me Bud, with this weird tone that sounds like he's being forced to pretend we get along. A few times I've tried to talk to my mom about it. I'll say something like, "Is Dan mad at me or something?" And she'll brush it off with, "No, he's just tired," or, "You know how he gets." And maybe I do. He's just a hard guy to read. But I know he doesn't see me as an adult. I could pay every bill in this house, and he'd still think I was freeloading. One time, I offered to pay for a new washer when the old one started leaking. It was almost $1,000, but I figured it was fair since I live here. Dan insisted I didn't have to, but when I bought it anyway, he made this sarcastic comment at dinner like, "Well, looks like Travis finally found a way to contribute." I just nodded and let it slide, but inside I was boiling. It's like no matter what I do, I'm just the kid sleeping in the back room who never left. I've thought about moving out more times than I can count. I even checked out a few places last summer, but everything decent was either way out of budget or too far from my client base. Being here, I can focus on work, avoid a commute, and actually save money. But I also feel stuck, like I'm living in some weird limbo between being a teenager and an adult. My friends have mostly moved on, married, moved, or just drifted away. I talked to a few online, mostly other freelancers, but I can't remember the last time I went out for drinks or even just hung out in person. It's hard to explain to people that your biggest argument last month was about who left the back porch light on. I guess what I'm saying is, life here is peaceful, quiet, stable, but sometimes I wonder if I'm trading comfort for growth. If staying here is slowly wearing me down in ways I can't even see. Dan doesn't think I'm a real adult, and maybe part of me doesn't either. But for now, this is the life I've got. And as much as I hate to admit it, it's not all bad. Just not what I thought 26 would look like. It started with a text from my mom while I was on a Zoom call with a client. Nothing urgent, just a heads up. We need to talk later tonight. Nothing bad, don't worry. I figured maybe something with the bills or Emily's college plans. But later that evening, after dinner, she sat us all down in the living room and said it as casually as if she was announcing a weekend barbecue. Her cousin Linda was moving in, along with her 2 kids. Just for a few weeks, she promised. She's going through a really hard time with the divorce, my mom said, glancing over at Dan, who was flipping channels like he couldn't care less. She just needs some support right now. I knew Linda, Hadn't seen her in years, but I remembered a loud laugh, colorful outfits, and the kind of kids who treated every room like a jungle gym. I wasn't thrilled, sure, but I wasn't heartless either. I said okay, tried to be cool about it. It's not like I had any say, anyway. They moved in on a Saturday morning while I was still in bed. I woke up to the sound of boxes hitting the floor and a kid screaming something about losing a sock. When I came into the hallway, the place already smelled like takeout and bubblegum. Linda hugged me like we were lifelong friends, her perfume clinging to my hoodie for the rest of the day. The kids, both boys, maybe 7 and 9, didn't so much say hello as run straight past me chasing each other with a foam sword. I remember standing there in the hallway, half asleep, and thinking this was going to be louder than I'd anticipated. For the first week or so, it wasn't terrible. They stayed in the guest room, which is technically more of a converted storage space near the laundry. It's small, barely fits a bed and a dresser, but my mom had done her usual whirlwind of cleaning and decorating to make it livable. The boys were loud, like running through the house in the morning loud, but I mostly kept to my room and my noise-canceling headphones. Linda helped out around the house a bit, made dinner once or twice, and bought groceries, though not the kind we normally stocked. I'm talking bright orange mac and cheese, cereal with cartoon mascots, and juice boxes that mysteriously disappeared within hours of arriving. Every night, I heard her and my mom talking in hushed voices in the kitchen, something about lawyers, child support, her ex being a manipulative idiot. I stayed out of it. I figured, this is temporary. I can be patient. But the noise didn't go away. The boys started treating the whole house like their playground, and my mom, who normally ran a tight ship, suddenly acted like we were running a youth hostel. I'd come down to make coffee and find toy cars under the kitchen table, tiny socks in the sink, and at least one of them always shouting. They didn't walk. They sprinted. They didn't talk. They yelled. I asked my mom once if they could maybe chill out a bit while I was working, and she just smiled like I was being dramatic. They're just kids, Travis. You used to be noisy too. Yeah, when I was 5. And not in a house where someone was trying to earn a living from client meetings and design deadlines. But whatever. I told myself I'd deal with it. A few weeks, she'd said. I circled the date on the calendar. Dan, of course, stayed as uninvolved as humanly possible. He'd leave early in the morning, come home late, and when he was around, he just turned up the volume on the TV. He made exactly one comment about the situation. Hope this isn't permanent, followed by a grunt. That was it. One night, maybe 2 weeks in, I walked into the bathroom and stepped on a Lego. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but that pain is unreal. I hopped around, swearing under my breath, and ended up brushing my teeth while standing in the hallway. The next morning, I found one of the boys playing on my laptop at the kitchen table. Apparently, Linda had let him borrow it for a game. My stomach dropped when I saw my open design files minimized in the corner of the screen. I calmly told him to close it and give it back. He didn't even look up, just said, "I'm not done yet," like it was his house. I looked at Linda, who was on her phone, half listening. "He's just playing, Travis," she said with a tired smile. "It's not a big deal." That night, I unplugged my external drives and locked them in my desk drawer. I started keeping my laptop in my room whenever I wasn't using it. I felt like a stranger in my own house, tiptoeing around someone else's family. My mom kept saying things like, "just a little while longer," and "she's looking for a place," but there was no end date. No sense of when things might go back to normal. It wasn't just the space. It was the slow erosion of my routine, the way my house stopped feeling like home. The refrigerator was always packed, but never with anything I bought. My coffee was replaced with some flavored pods the kids liked. My bathroom shelf slowly disappeared under bubble bath bottles and kids' toothpaste. I started skipping meals just to avoid the chaos downstairs. I'd eat late at night, cold leftovers and quiet resentment, then go back to my room and try to get some sleep with the sounds of cartoons blaring through the walls. That was the first real crack, I think. Not the moment they moved in, but the moment I realized nobody saw this as an imposition. To them, it was just another adjustment, one more thing I was expected to deal with because I happened to live here. And because I never made a scene, never yelled or pushed back too hard, they figured I was fine with it. But I wasn't. Not really. I didn't know it then, but something had already shifted, something that wouldn't be easy to undo. It happened on a Wednesday, sometime around 4 in the afternoon. I just finished up a video call with a client and decided to head out for a coffee, just to clear my head. The house had been extra noisy that day, one of the kids screaming because someone else stole their tablet, and Linda yelling from the laundry room about someone using too much detergent. The usual chaos. I figured a walk and a break from the circus would help me reset. I was gone maybe an hour. When I came back, something felt immediately off. There were shoes in the entryway, tiny sneakers and those ridiculous light-up sandals, scattered across the floor, not even kicked off properly. I walked down the hallway and froze in front of my bedroom door. It was open. I never leave it open. Inside, the first thing I noticed was that my bed was covered in toys. Action figures, dolls, a bright pink plastic pony, and what looked like a half-eaten sandwich sitting right on my pillow. My monitor had been moved, shoved awkwardly to the side of the desk, and my mic stand was tipped sideways like someone had tried to climb it. My keyboard was sticky. My ergonomic chair, the one I saved up months for, had glitter on it. Actual glitter. My computer, camera, mic, all of it, had been pushed into the far corner like it was in timeout. My headphones were missing, and there were crayon drawings on the wall near my desk. I just stood there, stunned, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It didn't register at first that I was actually looking at my workspace being treated like a daycare. Linda walked by the doorway a few seconds later, holding a basket of laundry. She didn't even look surprised to see me there. Just said, "Oh hey, just so you know, we had to shift some stuff around. The kids needed a little more space." I blinked. "What?" She smiled like this was all normal. "Your room's the biggest. The boys were getting too cramped in the guest room. It's just temporary." Temporary. That word again. The same word my mom used when they first moved in. The same word that now apparently meant I didn't have a room anymore. I walked in slowly, stepping over a toy truck and an empty juice pouch, trying to stay calm. My laptop was sitting on the floor. On the floor. I crouched to pick it up, heart pounding, and checked it for damage. Luckily, it still worked, but the charger cable was missing. I stood up and turned around, and that's when I saw it. My camera bag, open, with one of the lenses sitting exposed next to a sock and what might have been a chewed-up fruit snack. I walked straight into the living room, where my mom was folding laundry and talking to Emily. "Mom," I said, my voice more forceful than I meant. "Why is there stuff in my room? Why are they in my room?" She looked up like I'd just asked why the sky was blue. "Oh, Travis, calm down. It's just for a little while. Linda said the kids were too cramped in the guest room, and your room has more space." I stared at her. "I pay rent. That's my room. That's also where I work. You still have all your things," she said, brushing it off like I was being unreasonable. "Nothing's been thrown out. Everything's shoved into a corner like it doesn't matter," I said. "My equipment is all over the place." One of the kids was eating a sandwich on my bed. "They're kids," she replied with this weird, tight smile. "They don't understand boundaries yet." "Yeah? Well, that's not my fault," I snapped. "This is where I live. This is where I work. You didn't even ask me. You didn't even say anything." At that point, Dan looked up from his recliner where he was half watching some detective show. "It's not the end of the world, bud. Just let them use the room for a bit. You're not being kicked out." I turned to him, jaw tight. "I don't have a bed to sleep in. My desk is unusable. I'm literally being kicked out of the space I pay for." My mom sighed, clearly annoyed now. "You can set up in the dining room for now. It's just for a few weeks. You're making this more dramatic than it needs to be." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. This is my workplace. I have deadlines. I have client meetings. You want me to take Zoom calls next to a refrigerator and a screaming kid? Emily stood up then, clearly uncomfortable, and disappeared upstairs. She didn't say anything. I couldn't blame her. Linda finally walked in, drying her hands on a towel, and said, "Look, Travis, I know it's not ideal, but you're an adult. You can adapt. They're just kids. They need space." That sentence hit like a punch in the gut. "You're an adult. You can adapt." I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned around and went back to what was left of my room. I spent the next 2 hours carefully collecting my gear, wiping off juice smears and candy residue, organizing cords and tools like it made any difference. I moved it all to the dining table, which was next to the kitchen, where someone was always making noise. That night, I slept on the old couch in the basement. It smelled like dust and laundry detergent, and the springs dug into my back. Around 1 a.m., I could still hear footsteps overhead. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how the hell this had become my life. I used to have a room. Now I had a corner. I waited until after dinner, once the kids were finally glued to the TV and the noise level had dropped to something close to tolerable. The tension in the house had been thick for days, and I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the kitchen where my mom was rinsing dishes and said, as calmly as I could, "Can we talk for a minute?" She didn't look at me right away, just kept scrubbing a plate like it owed her money. "What about?" she asked, her voice already tired. "My room," I said. "Look, I get that Linda's going through a hard time. I'm not trying to be cold about it. But that room isn't just where I sleep. It's my office. It's where I work. I can't do my job from a basement couch or the dining table with kids running around." She sighed loudly, still not facing me. "We've been over this, Travis." "Not really," I said. "You told me it's temporary and that I just have to adjust. But I'm paying to live here. I'm paying for that room. It's not just a place to sleep, it's how I make a living. Without it, I can't do my job. Finally, she turned around, arms crossed, dish towel over her shoulder. This is my house. I decide how space gets used. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were shocking, but because of how bluntly she said them, like that was supposed to be the end of the conversation. I know it's your house, I said, but you're treating me like I don't belong here. Like I'm just in the way. You're being dramatic, she said. You're still here, aren't you? We didn't throw you out. Dan walked in then, holding a can of soda and doing that thing he always does where he tries to act like he's not involved in anything. But as soon as he saw me standing there with that look on my face, he smirked like he was already tired of the whole thing. She's right, Bud, he said, cracking the can open. It's just a room. It's not the end of the world. You've still got the basement. You're fine. I clenched my jaw and looked at him. You think working next to the washing machine is fine? You think taking calls from clients with cartoons blasting in the background is fine? He shrugged. You're making a big deal out of nothing. That's when Linda appeared in the doorway, arms folded, lips tight, like she'd been waiting to jump in. Seriously, she said, her voice sharp. You're upset because a couple of kids need a place to sleep? No, I said. I'm upset because you took the only space I had without even asking. Because no one thought I deserved a say in what happens in the room I pay for. She laughed, but it wasn't funny. You don't know what real problems are, Travis. I'm trying to keep my family together while dealing with a divorce and lawyers in custody. You're whining about your little tech setup. My little tech setup is my job, I said. It's how I make money. It's how I pay rent here. Rent that apparently doesn't count for much. She rolled her eyes. Try juggling 2 kids under 10 in a court case. Then talk to me about stress. I looked back at my mom. She said nothing. Didn't defend me. Didn't say Linda was out of line. She just stared down at the floor like she couldn't be bothered to take a side. That was the moment I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just a temporary inconvenience anymore. This was a clear message. I wasn't a member of this house. I was an obligation. Someone they could move aside when it suited them. I wasn't part of the conversation. I was the problem. I didn't think it could get worse after the argument in the kitchen, but a few days later, it somehow did. I came home from running errands and decided to try grabbing a few things from what used to be my room. An extra SSD, a sketchbook I left in the drawer, and maybe, if I was lucky, my missing charger cable. I knocked, just out of habit, but no one answered. I opened the door a crack, not even stepping inside, and saw one of Linda's kids bouncing on my mattress like it was a trampoline while the other was eating crackers, crumbs spilling everywhere. Before I could even say anything, my mom's voice came from behind me, sharp, tired, and cold. Don't go in there without permission. I turned around, confused, thinking maybe I'd misheard her. That room is for the kids now, she said. They need their space. If you need something, ask first. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt so unreal. Are you serious? That's my room. I pay rent for that room. She just crossed her arms like she had already made peace with whatever line she was crossing. You still have a roof over your head. You're not homeless. Don't make this into something it's not. It's not about having a roof over my head, I said, trying not to raise my voice. It's about the fact that everything I've built, my entire career, relied on that space. And now I'm not even allowed to step inside it without permission. They're children, Travis, she snapped. They need stability. They've been through a lot. And I haven't. I asked, gesturing toward the laptop bag hanging off my shoulder. I'm losing clients because I can't record properly. I've missed 2 deadlines this week because I don't have the right gear with me. Do you think this is sustainable? But she was already walking away, mumbling something about me being selfish again, just like Linda had. I stood there in the hallway for a minute, then quietly shut the door. That soft click felt louder than a slammed one. After that, I stopped trying. I packed up what I could carry and started working from a cafe a few blocks away. It wasn't ideal. I had to keep buying overpriced coffee just to hold my seat, and even then, half the time I was seated next to loud teenagers or crying babies. The Wi-Fi dropped constantly, and the lighting made it impossible to shoot anything usable. My mic picked up every blender sound from the barista counter, and more than once I had to reschedule meetings because the background noise made it impossible to hear. I was spending money I didn't have just to maintain appearances. One of my longtime clients ghosted me after I missed a delivery date for a website overhaul we'd been planning for months. Another emailed me a polite but firm message that they'd be moving in a different direction after I sent them a video with horrible audio and low-res visuals, recorded from a makeshift setup using my phone and a pillow for sound dampening. My inbox started to thin out. The calendar that once had color-coded blocks for every hour of the day turned into blank space. I tried to hold it together, told myself I just needed to push through, that things would stabilize. But every day I woke up in that cold basement, hunched over a folding table with a stiff chair and no windows, I could feel something unraveling. I wasn't sleeping. I was eating once a day, if that. My hands would shake during calls. Sometimes I'd open my laptop and just stare at the screen for an hour, unable to move, overwhelmed by the list of tasks piling up and the knowledge that I didn't even have the proper setup to complete them. I started forgetting things, small but important things. Deadlines, client names, passwords. I'd show up to meetings and realize halfway through that I hadn't prepped anything, my mind foggy from exhaustion. I recorded a voiceover for a marketing video, and when I played it back, I could hear my voice cracking midway through, not from emotion, but from sheer mental burnout. Everything I'd spent 2 years building, my client list, my reputation, the structure I had built for myself to make this freelancing thing work, was starting to fall apart. Not because of a market crash or a bad review or some catastrophic event, but because I no longer had a room. Because someone decided that my space didn't matter. Because they need it more. And somehow, no one saw it as a problem. Not my mom. Not Dan. Not Linda. I was still here, wasn't I? That was all that seemed to matter. It was late on a Sunday evening, the kind of quiet where the house finally felt still after a whole day of stomping feet, toy explosions, and back-to-back episodes of cartoons blaring from the living room. I was in the basement, sitting in front of my laptop with a half-finished design on the screen and a deadline I already knew I wasn't going to meet. I closed the lid, rubbed my eyes, and decided I had to try one more time. Not because I thought it would work, but because I needed to say I had done everything I could before giving up. I went upstairs. My mom was folding laundry on the couch, while Dan sat nearby watching a police drama, not even pretending to pay attention to what was going on between us. I stood there for a second, trying to get the words right, then just said it. "Can we talk?" My mom looked up, tired but not surprised. "What now?" "I want to propose something," I said calmly. "A compromise. I'm not asking to kick Linda and the kids out. I get it, they're going through a hard time. But I need a space to work. I can't keep doing this in the basement. I'm falling behind on everything." She just kept folding a shirt, not even looking at me. "And let me move my equipment into the guest room," I said. "The kids can stay in my room if that's what has to happen. I'll take the guest room. I'll even sleep somewhere else if needed. I just need enough room to set up my desk and work. That's all I'm asking." My mom didn't answer right away. She just took a deep breath and placed the shirt in the basket like she was gearing up to deliver a verdict. Then she finally looked at me. "There's not enough room in there, Travis. You've seen it. It's barely big enough for their beds." I nodded. "I have, but I don't need much. I can make it work." She shook her head. "No, the boys are used to your room now. It's more comfortable for them. They've already settled in." That word, comfortable, hit harder than I expected. Comfortable for them. Not necessary. Not fair. Just easier. I looked at Dan, hoping he might step in. He just kept his eyes on the screen and took a sip of his drink like I wasn't even standing there. "So that's it," I said. "They get my room because they're used to it. I lose everything I've worked for because it's more convenient." My mom shrugged. "You're young. You'll bounce back. You can handle it." And there it was. The clearest truth I'd heard since this whole thing started. It wasn't about what was fair. It wasn't about who paid what or who needed what. It was about who was easier to ignore, who was less trouble, who could be pushed aside without causing a scene. Me. I was the one who wouldn't blow up, who wouldn't walk out, who'd figure it out somehow, because I always had. I didn't say anything else. I just nodded slowly, turned around, and went back down to the basement. The folding table, the laundry baskets, the cold concrete. It was all still there, waiting for me like a punchline to a bad joke. I sat back down and opened my laptop again, but my hands were shaking too much to type. It was just after midnight when I finally admitted to myself that I couldn't do it anymore. I was on the phone with my friend Alex, someone I hadn't talked to in weeks because I'd been so buried in stress and scrambling to keep my business from crumbling. We hadn't planned to talk for long, just a quick check-in that turned into a 2-hour therapy session. He asked how things were going, and I told him everything. Not just the surface-level stuff, but the gut-level truth. About losing my room, the work I was falling behind on, the feeling of being a stranger in my own house. About how the phrase, "You're young, you can handle it," had been thrown at me like a reason to be treated like I didn't matter. He didn't say much at first, just let me unload. Then he said something simple. "Dude, why are you still there?" I didn't have an answer. Not a real one. I said the usual, saving money, waiting for things to blow over. It's just temporary. But the words felt hollow. Like I was repeating a script I didn't even believe in anymore. He just said, "You deserve to be somewhere you're respected. It's not just about space. It's about how they treat you." After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a while, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the dryer upstairs. I thought about all the times I bit my tongue, all the deadlines I missed, the clients I lost, the humiliation of asking for permission to enter the room I was paying for, the way no one stood up for me, not once, not even when I laid everything out calmly. I thought about how they all looked at me like I was the problem for even bringing it up. I got up and opened a tab on my laptop. I started searching for studio apartments, just to see, just to imagine. But then I saw one, A small place just a few blocks away. Nothing fancy. One room, tiny kitchen, bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it had a lock on the door, windows that let in actual light, and just enough space for a desk, a chair, and a mattress. And it was available immediately. I didn't hesitate. I filled out the contact form. I sent the deposit. I scheduled a move-in for the end of the week. The landlord responded within the hour. Lease was ready to sign the next day. I didn't tell anyone in the house. Not yet. I didn't want to explain myself again. Not to people who'd already made it clear that they didn't think what I needed was worth anything. So that night, quietly, I started packing. I took the essentials first, my laptop, my backup drives, the few cables and tools I still had access to. I filled a duffel bag with clothes and put it in the back of my car. I moved like a shadow, not turning on lights, not making noise. Every time the floor creaked, I held my breath. I didn't want a confrontation. I didn't want one last lecture about how I was overreacting or ungrateful or being selfish. I just wanted to go. It took me 3 nights to get everything out. I skipped dinners, stayed in the basement until late, packed between freelance gigs. By the time I signed the lease on Thursday, almost everything I owned was already in my car or at the new place. The studio wasn't much. The walls were off-white and cracked in places. The floor creaked near the radiator, and the kitchen had one burner that didn't work. But when I closed the door behind me and turned the lock for the first time, it felt like the loudest silence I'd heard in months. Not from emptiness, but from peace. There were no toys on the floor, no juice boxes in the fridge, no lectures, no dismissive shrugs, no one telling me I should just adapt. Just my things, in my space, where I could work and sleep and breathe without feeling like I was in the way. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I waited until the last box was in the car. There wasn't much left, just a couple of things I had stashed in the laundry room, some cables I had recovered from behind the couch, and the folding chair I had been using in the basement. I didn't want to leave without saying something. Not because I owed them closure, but because I needed to say it out loud, at least once, before I walked away for good. My mom was in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of tea and her phone, scrolling through something with that same distracted look she always had lately. I sat down across from her and waited until she noticed me. She looked up, surprised, like she hadn't even realized I was still in the house. "I wanted to talk before I go," I said. She set the phone down, slowly, like she already knew she wasn't going to like where the conversation was going. "I'm not angry," I started, "but I am disappointed. You took my home and my job, and you never once apologized. Not even a conversation. Just acted like it was normal." She frowned, leaning back in her chair like I was starting some kind of performance. "Travis, come on. Don't be so dramatic." "Dramatic?" I repeated. "You made me ask for permission to go into my own room. You let someone else take over the space I paid for and told me I'd be fine because I'm young. I lost clients. I lost income. I've been working in cafes and basements and trying not to completely fall apart, and all I got from you was silence." She shook her head, looking frustrated now. "No one asked you to pay. That was your choice." I stared at her, stunned. "I paid because I thought it was fair. I was trying to contribute. I didn't want to just live here for free. You didn't ask, but you accepted it. Every month. You never once said it wasn't necessary. You never once said no. You never said it came with conditions," she said. "It didn't," I said. "But I assumed it came with basic respect. Not being treated like a burden. Not being told I was selfish for asking to use the space I was literally paying for. I thought this was my home. But it never was, not really. And now I get it." She didn't say anything. Just sat there, hands around her mug, jaw tight. "I've signed a lease," I said. "I'm moving out today. It's a small place, but it's mine. I can work there. I can think there. I can breathe there." Her eyes flicked up for a second. "So that's it?" "Yeah," I said. "That's it." She looked like she wanted to say more. Maybe something to defend herself, maybe something to take it back. But nothing came. Just silence. I stood up, took one last look at the kitchen, the fridge with the grocery list I always contributed to, the spot on the counter where my coffee mug used to sit every morning. Then I walked out the door. The first night in the new apartment was strange. The studio was barely furnished. Just my mattress on the floor, a secondhand desk I found online for $40, and a lamp that flickered slightly when I plugged it in. I didn't even have curtains yet, just a towel pinned across the window to keep the street light from blasting into the room. But for the first time in months, maybe longer, I slept. No noise from the TV in the next room. No kids running down the hallway. No tension in the walls like the house was holding its breath. Just silence. Real, honest silence. The first morning, I woke up early, not because of noise or anxiety, but because I wanted to. I made coffee with my own mug, in a kitchen no one else used. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel dread. I didn't feel like I was already behind before the day had started. I cleaned up my workspace, updated my portfolio, added some new design packages I had been putting off for months because I never had the headspace to focus. I adjusted my pricing, rebranded a few sections of my website, and started replying to inquiries that had been sitting in my inbox unanswered. Within a week, I had 2 new clients signed. Within 2 weeks, for more. The difference was immediate. I could record video again, clean and crisp with no background noise. I could take meetings without muting myself every 5 seconds to drown out chaos. I didn't have to schedule work hours around someone else's noise. I didn't have to explain to anyone why I needed quiet or why deadlines mattered. I could just work, uninterrupted, consistently, and the money followed. By the end of the first month, I was earning nearly twice what I had been making before. Not because I was suddenly more talented, but because I finally had the space to be consistent, to do the job the way I knew how to do it. My turnaround times improved. Clients referred me to other clients. Word spread. I was booked solid through the next quarter. And the stress, the fog that had been clinging to my brain for so long, began to lift. I wasn't snapping at people anymore. I wasn't waking up with that heavy knot in my chest. I didn't feel trapped or ignored or small. I felt capable again, in control. I started cooking for myself. I bought a cheap bookshelf and filled it with things that were mine. I opened the window while I worked. I started taking evening walks just to get out, not to escape anything, but because it felt good. Moving out hadn't been easy. I was stretched thin, emotionally and financially. But the freedom that followed, it was like exhaling after holding my breath for years. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving around other people's needs. I was living. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang, right in the middle of a project I was wrapping up for a new client in Chicago. I glanced at the screen and saw her name, Mom. I hadn't spoken to her since I left. Not a call, not a message, nothing. I just stared at the screen for a second, not sure if I wanted to answer. But something in me said pick up. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the part of me that still wanted to believe she might finally say something that sounded like regret. I answered. Hello. There was a pause. Then her voice came through, softer than I remembered, thinner somehow. Hi, Travis. It's me. I didn't respond, just waited. If she had something to say, I wasn't going to do the work for her. She cleared her throat. How have you been? I could tell it wasn't a real question, just a lead in. I said busy. Working. Another pause. Then she said it. The boys, they got into your computer. I guess they were trying to play something, and they spilled juice on it. It won't even turn on now. I didn't say anything. I wasn't surprised. I just waited. Linda still hasn't found a job, she added, her voice even quieter now. It's been harder than she expected. And I know you're settled in your new place, but I was wondering. We were wondering if maybe you could come back. Just for a few weeks. Just until things settle. You know, help out a little. We'd love to have you back. We're a family. That last word made my stomach turn a little. I let out a slow breath. Family, I said, not even trying to hide the edge in my voice. Is that what this is now? She didn't respond at first. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator behind her, the same one I used to stand in front of every morning, staring at shelves filled with food I had paid for but was never asked about. You made it pretty clear what my place in that family was, I said. You took my room, my office. You ignored everything I said. You told me I'd be fine because I'm young. And now that you need something again, I'm family? Travis, she said, almost pleading. It's not like that. We were overwhelmed. Things got out of hand. I didn't mean to hurt you. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. You didn't have to mean it. You just had to listen. One time. But you didn't. I just thought, she trailed off. I let the silence hang for a second. I have clients now. Commitments. A life that doesn't depend on whether someone decides I deserve space or not. I'm not coming back. She didn't argue. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. Okay, she finally said. I understand. I almost hung up there, but I stopped myself. I hope things work out for you, I said, and I meant it. But I'm not your safety net. Not anymore. Then I ended the call, and I didn't look back. I sat there for a minute after she spoke, letting her words hang in the air. The quiet hum of the call, that slight echo of her breath on the line, reminded me of all the conversations we never had, at least not like this. I could hear the desperation behind her voice, the way she was trying to sound composed, like she wasn't asking me to do something she knew she had no right to ask. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and said it as clearly and calmly as I could. I love you. I love all of you. You're my family. But I can't go back to a place where I'm not respected. There was no anger in my voice. Just truth. Tired, measured truth. You didn't just take my room, I said. You took my job. You took the only space I had left. And when I asked for help, when I asked for fairness, all I got was excuses. That wasn't support. That wasn't family. She didn't interrupt. She just stayed quiet. I think she knew what was coming next. My back is not a bench, I said. You don't get to sit on it when it's convenient and then forget it was ever there. Then I heard it, her breath hitching, soft at first, and then a sniffle. And then she started to cry, not loud or dramatic, but the kind of crying that slips out when someone realizes they can't fix what they've broken. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to reach through the phone and hold her, tell her everything would be okay. But another part of me knew that if I did, I'd be lying, to her and to myself. So I just sat there, listening, heart pounding, chest tight. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I really am. But I can't be the one who always bends." She didn't respond, just kept crying. I waited a second longer, then I hung up. It hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. It hurt in that deep, hollow way that only family can reach. But at the same time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not because I stood up to someone. Not because I won anything. But because I had finally chosen myself. And I wasn't going back. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, back against the wall, legs stretched out in front of me, just looking around at the space I'd built. The studio was finally done. Shelves up. Desk assembled. Lights mounted. The monitor I thought I'd never afford again stood right where it should be, framed by clean walls and quiet. Everything had its place. The wires weren't tangled. The coffee mug was warm in my hand, and the room smelled faintly of wood polish and fresh air. It hit me, in that moment, how far I'd come. Everything I'd been afraid of had already happened. The silence from my family. The rejection. The isolation. The feeling of being pushed out of the only home I had ever known. There were nights, especially in those first few weeks, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made the wrong decision. Wondering if I should have just kept my head down a little longer. If I should have compromised more. Said less. But I didn't. And now, sitting there, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to say before. I survived it. And not just survived, I grew. I rebuilt. I figured it out. Alone, yes. But not broken. Not bitter. Just different. Stronger. Sometimes people say you have to lose everything to find out who you are. I don't know if that's always true, but in my case, I had to lose my place in the family to gain even the chance of freedom. Or maybe it's not freedom. Maybe it's just space. Clarity. A sense of self. Maybe it's just the illusion of control over my own life. But even that illusion, after years of being told to sit down and be flexible, feels like oxygen. I still love them. That hasn't changed. But I don't owe them my silence, or my obedience, or my bed. Now, I work when I want. I sleep without noise. I walk into a room and know it's mine. And that might not sound like much, but for me, it's everything. What do you think? Have you ever had to choose between your peace and your people? Would you have gone back?